Hello and welcome. Firstly, Anumodana, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. A very big, enormous thank you, and excellent and marvellous, wonderful for your support, your generous support in our project of refurbishing the building next door to create Samadhi Sala, the new meditation hall. As you know, at the beginning of the Vasa, some nearly 4 weeks ago, the full moon of July, I had made the determination to look at the building next door and with a view to restoring it to its former glory and turning it into a useful place, a place for meditation, for mental development, bhavana in Pali. And thanks to all of your kind donations online, that is way ahead of schedule. The initial demolition work is complete and the groundwork is complete. The structural work is complete and it's now being finished off internally and externally with rendering and plastering. I hope you've been able to see the photographs posted here on this channel of its progress since so far. The pictures of how it was, the pictures of how it is now, representing change. Change now, hopefully for the better, but retaining its original appearance and a lot of its original structure and character. So now I'd like to reaffirm my determination. I think it's possible, because of your backing and support of this very worthwhile project, to have this now complete by the end of the Vasa, which is way above my original anticipated time scale, albeit quite a little bit above the original budget too, but that's okay. There was no firm budget in place, nor was there a time scale. It was a determination to put in the effort to see it through to completion, whether it be in my lifetime or in future generations. But it's coming together and will be, I'm pretty sure, with your help, complete over the next 2 months. We have 2 months, 2 lunar months left of this Vasa. By which time, when the Katina festivals are beginning to be celebrated in all of the nearby temples here, we will be having our own celebrations too, with the inauguration of the new Samadhi Sala Dharma Hall. So the photographs of its progress so far are there in the posts here on this channel, and the short video of progress so far, or work so far, that we've been able to put here. I hope that's of interest, and already people are coming to see, coming to visit, and there is a lot of excitement about it. So once again, Anumodana to you, and sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very, very much indeed. And moving on with your comments, the first comment today is from someone asking about, would it be possible to become a monk stroke nun as a transgender person? And how could someone go about this without making anyone else feel uncomfortable? Okay, so I must confess to being rather ignorant on this subject and the specifics. However, and firstly I will say, one, you should approach whomever is looking to become a monk or a nun should first try and approach their nearest Buddhist organization, monastery or temple that is somewhere that is convenient to them, where they can visit and stay and practice prior to ordination. It is a requirement prior to ordination that all people looking to ordain go and have spent, obviously are experienced meditators and have spent some time staying and living within a monastic community. In firstly a supportive role as what we call a kapya. A kapya is an assistant, or we've often heard the phrase in monastic terms of a temple boy, or I suppose temple girl. So prior to novice ordination, you might spend a year. You might ordain as an anagarika, or take at least the 10 precepts, wearing white clothes for a year. And this goes for anyone. And in that situation, you become used to monastic rules, the monastic way of life, and you have plenty of time to do so. And this could be 1 year, 2 years living in a monastery, in a monastic environment, in a community, helping, supporting, doing the jobs and doing the work that the monks or the nuns cannot do themselves. And only then, after that time, might you be able, invited, or you might request and be accepted to ordain, take novice ordination, where you will ordain as a samanera rather. And as a samanera you will have 75 precepts, inclusive there of your ordinary 8 or 10 precepts that you've been living on. And that novice monk or samanera ordination, it's called pabaja, would be for a period of another 1 to 2 years before you would be accepted or invited to take higher ordination, bhikkhu ordination, or in the case of nuns, bhikkhuni ordination. So as you see, it's a long time before you'd be able to ordain whomever you are. The process can take 5 to 7 years, and then after which there is a 5-year period when you remain within your sangha, dependent on them, and they dependent on you for further instruction, training, practice, before you can go it alone, so to speak. Go out and either live on your own or move to a different community or even country. So it's a long process. So firstly, I would recommend to anyone they find their most local monastery, if it's possible, because then you may also have the support and access to your previous contacts, life, worldly existence to either encourage you or to support you in your intentions. With regards to sexuality and gender, now as potential, I will keep wanting to say ordinands, so potential ordainees, we are looking to renounce worldly life, inclusive of identity, sexuality, ultimately looking to reduce desires for being and becoming by means of reducing greed, hatred and delusion, eventually eradicating those, along with the desire for relationships, and really putting all ideas of sexuality aside. It is a celibate order. So it rather doesn't make much difference. However, in the ordination rules and the Vinaya rules of bhikkhu or bhikkhuni life, there are very strict guidelines to support that life of celibacy dividing and keeping separate the lives of monks and nuns, that is bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, that is males and females. So you would have to ask the particular monastery or sangha or division of a sangha concerned where you're interested in ordaining as to what their interpretation of those rules are and how they can facilitate your own ordination with regards to your own personal circumstances. And this doesn't just apply to transgender people or people of any particular sexuality. This applies to anyone wishing to ordain. It's a personal and individual experience to be discussed with your potential preceptors and the sangha you're wishing to join. So I would suggest you try and do that firstly, but look at it as a long process. Now this doesn't mean that in the meantime, whilst you're waiting for all of this, you aren't able to continue with your practice just as you are now, which will also help to slowly reduce your own feeling or sense of self. So we're looking to realize not only anicca, impermanence about existence, dukkha, suffering, the suffering there is inherent in existence, but also anatta, not self, that we are not these physical bodies or these thinking brains, but merely occupying them, using them for this lifetime, hopefully to create good karma through good actions. Karma means actions of body, speech and mind, generating good results. Knowing this, developing this sense of self as a lay practitioner, a sense of not self, there is no self, rather, the issue of gender is going to be less and less and less. If it isn't, it is still an issue. No more than if a heterosexual, as I say, I'm very ignorant on this subject, but someone whom is maybe very sure of their gender is also having to reduce their attachment to appearance, look. So people may be attached to their physique or their beauty, intoxicated with youth and attractiveness. This all needs to be abandoned on the process, on the path towards enlightenment. And if this is not your intention, then that is also okay. There is a path in lay life, in household life, for all practitioners to follow also, as upasikas and upasikas, lay men, lay women, or a mixture of the two, it doesn't matter, where one only needs to keep the 5 precepts of no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct as opposed to celibacy, lying or taking of intoxicants, but can fully practice, can even remain as such, staying in monasteries. But once again, it's up to each individual monastery and sangha, and rather dependent on the facilities they have available there, accommodation-wise, as to how they will welcome you and support you in your practice, dependent on your needs. It may be you don't have anything nearby and you have to look further afield. But there are Buddhist organizations in most places that if you can't find monasteries to visit at first, this is the first step, to visit monasteries, spend time there and practice there, then they will be able to point you in the right direction. a simple search online for Buddhist groups, organizations, something of that nature. Okay, so I hope that's useful. And the next comment. So, I'm wondering if you've made any videos where you exclusively talk about the now or the instant, and how here is all there is and all we have. So, you've been looking for videos talking about this. Well, I think I've said this before. All of these talks, all of these videos are about this. They're about just that, the present moment, here and now. The practice is about bringing our attention, our conscious awareness, into the present moment, here and now. Now, there may be not a video entirely dedicated to that subject with that as a title, but I'm pretty sure in each and every talk, references made by way of practical application of our practice to the fact that it is of no importance what has already happened. It cannot be changed. And anything that, when I say no importance, it is importance by way of pachaya, it is the causes and conditions, and karma, the actions that we have done, that will determine vipaka, the results of those actions, which has led to this present moment here and now. But having led to this present moment here and now, it is just that we have, and nothing more. The former, the past, cannot be changed. What we have is here and now, in the present moment only. And as for the future, it hasn't happened yet. It may not happen. And it is only imagination that runs away with us, making us think what might happen in the future, but doesn't necessarily determine what actually will happen in the future. What does determine what will happen in the future are all of our actions of body, speech and mind in this present moment, here and now. And that is what is important. And I stress this in all of these talks with regards to not only our meditation practice. When we sit to meditate, we try to put aside all concerns, all thoughts of the past, and not think or dwell upon the future. By observing a meditation object, something present in this moment, here and now. Namely, the breath, breathing, is very present. It's a part of our bodily action. Involuntary, an automatic response process, but can be observed in its natural state, and therefore is a meditation object that is bringing our conscious awareness right into the present moment, here and now, within each and every intake of breath and exhalation of breath. This is the present moment, and it is just that. It can be reduced to the smallest amount of time, but there are no measurements in the present moment. In essence, it too is timeless. It is there we can get a glimpse of Nibbana in an environment free of the past and not related to the future, of complete awareness, mindfulness in the present moment, where little externally can affect us, even pain. pain in an instance, in a moment. A needle prick, like an injection, for instance, doesn't hurt because it's so short an amount of time. But if that pain was to be extended over a period of time, it will become something we know we call pain. But as a sharp jab, we don't associate it so much with pain, just a feeling. So even pain or suffering of any kind is made up of many moments strung together to extend it over time, but more exaggerated by associating that feeling and that experience from the past, and then through imagination, and only imagination, pushing it and extending it into the future, and creating yourself more suffering by taking the pain from the present moment and expanding it over time with what ifs, and how am I going to cope with this? How can I bear this? Well, one can ask yourself, well, I can bear it because I have bore it so far. And I'm bearing it now, in this present moment. So what is another moment, or string of moments? It's just that, the same. So there's a little bit about here and now, but it's all we have, and it's all we can talk about. It is the Dharma. It is our existence. Everything else is gone, finished, never to be seen again and cannot be changed. And nothing else has happened yet, and may not. So it's that simple. It doesn't need an entire talk, but it is associated in every aspect of every talk. Present moment, here and now. Okay, this comment says, okay, but if gods in the God realm are not permanent too, what happens to them when they cease existing? If there is no higher realm than God realms, what happens to them? So much the same as humans in the human realm. One's physical presence, or in the sense of gods, their presence at a different, and we don't know, we've not got any recollection through our own experience of this, so it's again hearsay and belief, but we don't know, but one is told and comes to understand to some extent that these other realms, be it hell realms or heavenly realms, whether you are devas, so like angels, or gods or ghosts in hell realms, are experiencing a whole different perception of existence in terms of time and materialistic value, time and space, and the elements to some extent. But in all of those realms, there is still anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, and not self, as you point out. So in which case, what happens next? Now, just reading between the line, I think you're making an assumption that we go up and up and up through realms, which is not the case. It's like snakes and ladders. We can go up and down, up and down. You could be in the God realms, and then in the next life, your rebirth may be in the hell realms. As a result of past karma, there is no way of determining it, calculating it, or even point in bothering trying to work it out, because we don't know the karma we've created in previous existences, in previous lives. However, if we're in the God realms, it is likely to be as a result of previously good karma to have elevated us to such a pleasant existence. So in the heavenly realms, it's so pleasant, there's so little suffering, there's very little opportunity to practice. And it is said that they are eternally long by comparison to this lifetime. But they are impermanent also, and after which you would probably take rebirth into the human realm once again, in order to practice and become free from suffering, to experience suffering, become free from suffering by understanding its cause, eradicating its cause, and cutting off the fetters, the ties to existence, to rebirth. Really, this is the only place where one can attain to liberation or freedom from the cycle of rebirth into whichever realm. Because it is the place of Dharma in terms of this Buddha Sasana, that is the experience of this Buddha's, this enlightened being's teachings still being available to us, allowing us to understand the path towards liberation from this, to attain to Sotapanna in the first instance, the first stage of enlightenment. Sakadagami, Anagami and Arahant, being completely able to let go of all attachments to this life and be liberated from all future rebirths. This is becoming enlightened. This is liberation or freedom from suffering within this lifetime. So what happens to these gods? They would be reborn in any other realm, another heavenly realm, of which there are many, even possibly hell realms or animal realms, but more likely the result of them being in the heavenly realms is through their good actions, which would ultimately bring them to the human realm, where they can have a life able to have access to the Dharma, practice, and be liberated from future rebirth. Now, how literally one takes these things is entirely your own decision. As it isn't part of our experience, it is as well not to be too concerning yourself about such other realms and what ifs. That is a little bit like worrying about the future, which is equally pointless because it hasn't happened yet and it may not happen. What we need to concentrate on, what we need to focus on, is how we practice within this human realm. After all, that is what we are, with the opportunity we're given in the presence of the Dharma to practice in this present moment with our actions of body, speech and mind. Are we keeping precepts, sila, in order that we have a firm foundation to base our meditation on, developing samadhi? This is how we develop wisdom, panya. This is how we develop wholesome mind states and reduce unwholesome mind states in each and every present moment. Now, wondering, philosophizing with conjecture about the gods in the heavenly realms, the nagas in the hell realms, the devas in the Tusita heavens, etc., is of no practical use whatsoever. Asking them for help is of no use whatsoever. They're not there to help us. Worshipping, praying is of no use. All we can do is our own actions to determine through those causes and conditions we create our future. But we cannot guess at how that future will be. it will be the experience of the next moment. But what we can do is make this current moment, the present, as enjoyable and pleasant as possible through our actions of body, speech and mind, through creating good karma, good actions. There'll be good results in the future. Vipaka, to enjoy. So this question says, what monastery is he staying at? And what monastery ordained him? These questions I would like answered. So I think I've answered that quite often. I'm in Bentota, in a monastery. I'm the only monk here. It's very small. It's just a little Buddha Vihara, which is my kuti. But it soon will have a meditation hall, Samadhi Sala, and Dharma hall, and place where lay practitioners can come with its own facilities, separate from my kuti, my accommodation. So that's in Sri Lanka, the southwest coast of Sri Lanka. But I ordained under the preceptorship of the Mahabodhi Society, the president of the Mahabodhi Society there, Bhante Kassapa Mahatera, whom ordained me in Bodh Gaya, one of our branches of that organisation, the Mahabodhi Society in Bodh Gaya. But my Sangha resides, my main body of Sangha, my brethren, my brothers, live and where I trained and began monastic life in Bangalore, which is in central Karnataka, South India. So I hope that's answered those questions. And if you require any more information about that, or anyone does about my background, it is all written in the channel description page. Or I think if you go to the bottom of this video and click About, the About button, it takes you to the channel description page, where there is also my email address, or an email address that I will be able to respond to you directly, or you can go to the Mahabodhi Society website or ask me and I'll put you in touch with them. Concerning greed, hatred and delusion, is there a difference between hatred and aversion, or are they the same thing in Pali? And it's a quirk of translation to English when one gets used versus another. Okay, so yes, often when we translate a Pali word into our own language, mother tongue, whatever that might be, it doesn't always have a corresponding single word, so we might construct a sentence to explain that word, or have a variety of words in place of that Pali word. So various translators will use different translations. But we shouldn't get too mixed up on that. If we take lobha, dosa, moha, which are the Pali words for greed, hatred and delusion, those English words, greed, hatred and delusion, are the closest English translations of lobha, dosa, moha. And in that case, they're very good and quite accurate translations. Greed, hatred and delusion. Dukkha, for instance, coming from anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and not self, you'll see I say there unsatisfactoriness rather than suffering, whereas ordinarily dukkha is suffering. And that's true, dukkha does mean suffering. But suffering isn't usually considered as being graduated. Suffering seems to be very black and white, as very bad. whereas dukkha relates to unsatisfactoriness through to intense pain. So something not being quite right and a little bit annoying, and you'd rather it was a different way, to really being in agony and pain. Dukkha covers that entire spectrum. So unsatisfactoriness is a little broader than simply suffering alone. Suffering, the word, is associated with more difficulty, perhaps, than just not being quite comfortable enough. But that too, not being quite comfortable enough, still means suffering. The specific translation of dukkha is off-center, relating to the hub of a wheel not being quite centered on the axle, leading to a wheel not rolling correctly with a wobble, is literally what it means. I can't quite remember the etymology of dukkha, but one part of it means hub and the other means not on the center. But with regards to hatred and aversion, they too are various grades of not wanting something the way it is, which is a whole sentence instead of hatred. Hatred is like suffering or pain, the ultimate aversion, whereas aversion implies just, well, I'm not really liking it very much. It's not quite hate, is it? It's a long way from hating something or someone. So it's just varying degrees or a gradient of the same defilement. So at the root of aversion is dosa, which is the Pali word. And if we just use the Pali words, it's easy because we know what it means. We don't have to even translate it into one word. But for the sake of our discussion with others who might not know the Pali words, as useful as they are universally throughout Buddhism, not everybody uses them. And some may use Sanskrit words, which differ too. But for purposes of conversation, without getting too tied up in semantics or the detail of each and every word and translation, it's just not wanting something the way it is, it's wanting it to be otherwise. But that's a whole sentence. But aversion comes from that root defilement of hatred. To some extent, greed is the extreme version of, wanting another cup of tea. You wouldn't say someone's greedy if they were just enjoying a second cup of tea or a second cupcake or tea cake. They have these nice tea cakes here in Sri Lanka. I would think they're probably a legacy of other cultures, but they're nice buns, sort of slightly sweet, but very soft. And I get them often on arms round in the morning, put in my bowl. And I must confess to a little greed there, because I put that aside in my bowl, thinking, I'd like that tea cake with my meal here this morning. So when I see a little bag with a tea bun in it, a tea cake we call them in England, they're not toasted with butter on as we might have them in England. I don't have facilities for such, but they're so soft and nice, I rather like them. So there's a little bit of greed there, isn't there? A little bit of attachment, coming to know something. But there's also some sense in one learns what nutritional value is in certain foods and what you need to be aware of. You need to be mindful. And one can't say, oh, I'm just going to eat everything that goes in my bowl and blindly distribute the surplus and have what's left. Because you might not get the nutrition you need. You have to think about it a little bit. And it's in these small instances, as I have often noticed, I'm having the tea cake because it was when I had bad teeth, and they're soft, they're easier to chew than the more hard rock cakes, you'd call them in England, rock cakes they have, which are covered in hard granulated sugar, which not only are probably bad for your teeth, but quite hard if your teeth are a bit damaged or broken, as my teeth used to be. But thankfully are now not, they're all repaired. But I don't want them to get that way again, so I too still avoid, through aversion, but not hatred, those rock hard cakes, rock cakes with granulated sugar on. They're very chewy and sugary, in preferment for the nice soft tea cakes. I'm using this analogy of tea cakes and rock cakes by way of explaining the various grades of hatred, greed, hatred we have. And delusion comes into it too, because if you're not aware of this, if you just willy-nilly, that's a silly English expression that not everyone might understand, but if you just I was going to say carte blanche there, but that's another expression, not English, French. But if you just generally push aside everything and just take what you want without thought, just out of desire, this is delusion. But if there's a little bit of thought, that is why mindfulness, sati, samasati, right mindfulness, comes into it and is so important in your actions of body, speech and mind. Observation of desires as they arise, the desire for a tea cake as opposed to rock cake. Where is it coming from? Is it just because I prefer tea cakes, or are there some other reasons behind that? Now, it doesn't mean we search then for justification for our greed or desire. If that is the case, we observe that, searching for justification of our desire, as being another example of greed or excuse for hatred. That is all delusion, not knowing this, not being mindful of our emotions, our desires, and where they're leading us, how they're dictating to us, how they're controlling us. But when you're aware of those, you develop wisdom of these experiences. You are able to eradicate that delusion. Delusion is harder to see than greed. It's harder to see than hatred that manifests themselves so evidently. But delusion isn't just pure ignorance, not knowing. It is knowing but not applying, having the application of that knowledge, or not understanding. It's having the intellectual knowledge but not knowing what it really means or how to apply it. It's like not having any, what we say, common sense. No practical application of what we've learned. Like reading the manual, learning the manual, but not knowing how to operate what the manual relates to because you've never tried it. So that's the third of these root defilements we're trying to eradicate, all of which have varying degrees. Delusion, less so, you can be a little bit deluded. You're really either deluded or you're not. You can be a little confused over some areas of our practice, but usually this confusion can be dispersed through examining the present moment here and now, what it is you're experiencing. And by that I mean in a practical application of what I'm saying there is we bring our attention, our focus, our conscious awareness into the body. So when you're having a preference for the tea cake rather than the rock cake, what is your body telling you? Is it hungry? Are you having a feeling of craving? Or a real need for food, for sustenance? Is it a preference or a practical solution to satisfying a need, the need to satisfy hunger, without damaging your teeth en route to that? Or perhaps eating something that either isn't in accordance with your moral values, if you don't like eating meat or something like that, or eating just something simply that really you cannot get on with the taste of, something you don't like the taste of. That too is okay. You shouldn't force yourself to eat things that you don't like the taste of, because otherwise to do otherwise would be having a preference. The reason we have taste, the reason we have this sense of taste, is to ensure that we eat things that are good for us. Most poisons, most things that would harm us have a nasty taste about them, to warn us, or we've come to learn the taste of those things. But we also, through conditioning, come to tolerate these things, and also become even like eating chilies, for instance, and sour foods. That isn't naturally an enjoyable taste experience, but something through conditioning people have come to enjoy. But usually one can say, with wisdom and with practice, that if food tastes okay, even enjoyable, it's a good thing, because this is what aids digestion. If your mouth's watering because you're talking about nice food, as I am now, and it is, then it's a natural reaction to things that taste good. But if you force yourself to eat food that doesn't taste good, it won't your mouth won't water. But similarly, what you can't see inside your body won't necessarily digest it as effectively. So there's always reason and wisdom behind all of our actions of body, speech and mind. And this is dispelling or eradicating delusion. Not by being greedy or having hatred, not by eating too many tea cakes or throwing away all of the rock cakes, but by knowing what the body needs through bringing your conscious awareness into the body in the present moment, here and now. So once again, even concerning greed, hatred and delusion, we're coming back to this present moment, here and now thing. Because it's not just a thing, it is all we have. Our experience is just that. Based on recollection of past experience, yes. Based on the causes and conditions that were created in the past, mainly as a result of greed, hatred and delusion, but that have brought us to this place now of better understanding, hopefully with wisdom, to be able to dispel delusion. So maybe time for one more. I hope to see this. I think that might relate to pictures in the posts of the hall next door, but then it goes on to say, I desperately wish to learn about this religion and find a place of worship to help me do so. How do I go about this? Any tips would be greatly appreciated. So I don't know where you are to answer that question specifically, but maybe if one would assume you're contacting me, you have the internet, Google Buddhism is the first instance. Search whatever platform it is you have, search Buddhism, That's how we, I think, all start these days. I mean, if that's not the case, go to a library and find a book there. But this is always where one begins. And don't worry too much if you go in the wrong direction. We all do. There's no wrong direction. They'll all lead you somewhere. If you want to learn about the practice and its practical application, then keep listening to these talks where this is discussed, not just in relation to your comments and your questions, but also in Dharma talks. They can be found in a separate playlist. There are playlists to be found in the channel description page. Questions and answers talks, Dharma talks, categorized, separated thus, so you can just listen to one or the other, in date order or popularity, whatever is your preference. But this is also a good way. YouTube, listening to Dharma talks, listening to Buddhist monks talking about Buddhism will help you pick up a lot of information about this religion, which isn't one of worship or prayer, but one of learning and developing wisdom and understanding, as I was just explaining. It's a path of practice, not worship. A path of practice of moral virtue, sila is a Pali word, meditation, samadhi, another Pali word, and wisdom, panya. Those three Pali words make up the categories of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the instructive path that we all follow as Buddhists. You can begin by Googling Buddhism or Googling Four Noble Truths and Noble Eightfold Path. There are, in previous talks, I've given some references to books, or please email me if you'd like me to send you the links to some books on the devotional practices, the chanting, reflections on the suttas, an introduction to Buddhism, and anything of that nature. My email address again, it's on the channel description page. Maybe one more. And is it okay to take stimulants like cocaine or crystal meth? So no, I'd say not, because I think they're illegal in most places. And regardless of whether your view of such is that they are stimulants or intoxicants, is irrelevant if they are illegal. Now, it isn't breaking the precepts necessarily when one, for instance, breaks a law of a country, but those laws are usually put in place to prevent us causing others or ourselves harm. So, for instance, the law with regards to driving a car of speeding over a certain speed limit. Now, it isn't morally abhorrent to, say, drive a car at 40 miles an hour or 40 kilometers an hour when the speed limit is 30 miles per hour or 30 kilometers an hour, but you are breaking the law, the local law, by doing so and will be punished. Now, that isn't a specific precept. However, the reason the law is there is if you were to go even a little over 30, in fact you should be driving under 30, then the likelihood is you could, and people do, harm others. They run over children who run in front of the road in front of them, and then they're unable to stop in time. You could end up killing a child or an adult or anything by speeding. So the laws of society are there to help us keep our precepts. So don't become defiant and say, well, I think it's okay, I'm going to break the laws of the land, I know better. And after all, I'm not breaking precepts. Because ultimately one must look at these precepts as the idiot's guide to doing no harm, either to ourselves or others. If you need it broken down in the way it is. So, if you consider cocaine and crystal meth, and I must plead ignorance again, I don't know anything of these things experientially, but I have heard, and it is understood, that both are very addictive. Now, of course, anything can be addictive if that is within our nature. Even if it's not within our nature, if we don't have so-called addictive personalities, one can get stuck in routines of preference. One can drink too much of a coffee and become reliant on a stimulant such as caffeine. But mindfulness in everything, sati sampajana, in all of our actions of body, speech and mind, all that we do, being mindful of the body, mindful of our feelings, mindful of desires arising and passing away, as opposed to needs, what we need to survive, and mindful of all phenomena, all experience we encounter. These are the four foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana, or as explained in the Satipatthana Sutta. But that's summing them up, because it's practical. It's how we practically apply Dharma to everything and every experience. And with mindfulness, no one can say that even drinking too much coffee is a good thing, let alone more potent and highly addictive substances such as cocaine or crystal meth. So no, it's not okay. And that's not in relation to Buddhism. It's not okay in relation to the law of most countries and societies. And it's not okay in relation to your own well-being, and also the well-being of others. And whatever your argument on that is, that, well, you can handle it, it's okay, by the very fact of its production and how it gets from its production to you, when you give that consideration, which can be applied to many other things, there is a lot of harm done along the way and at its source. And by your use of that end product, you are only encouraging, facilitating, enabling, and exacerbating that harm that's being caused to others. So however you look at it, you are breaking precepts, ultimately, or they will be, something may be causing you to do so. So we keep precepts. The 5 precepts, 8 precepts, 10 precepts, 75 precepts of a novice monk, or the 227 precepts of a bhikkhu, or the 311 of a bhikkhuni. It doesn't matter. They're all supportive of us doing no harm to ourselves or to others. This is the foundation of our practice for meditation. People will hopefully be able to come to take precepts in the new meditation hall and practice their meditation, as hopefully some of you may be able to visit here in the future and also take advantage of those facilities. So on that note, I hope there's something useful there. If there is, please use it. If not, just let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.